I don't like Baldur's Gate 3. I think Breath of the Wild is kind of boring. I've tried multiple times to finish Ghost of Tsushima. I can't. And here's a problem. I think all three are great games. They're not overrated, they're not secretly bad. In fact, I understand exactly why people love them. I just don't like playing them. And I'm willing to bet you have at least one game like this too. A game everyone seems to love. Maybe you even understand why they love it. You've tried it, but something just doesn't click. For me, these are the three biggest examples. And Baldur's Gate 3 might be the easiest one to explain. Because with this game, I can pretty confidently say Baldur's Gate 3 isn't the problem. I am. I'm basically an RPG noob. I like RPGs. Cyberpunk is one of my favorite modern games. I've loved the Souls games. I've sunk hundreds of hours into The Witcher 3. But those are all games where you can engage with the RPG mechanics without needing a bachelor's degree in wizardry. Give me some stats, let me make a build, give me dialogue choices, let me level up. I'm happy. Once we start getting into really deep RPG stuff though, you lose me. And Baldur's Gate 3 is basically Dungeons & Dragons the video game, which sounds awesome, because I love D&D as a concept. Every time I hear people talk about their campaigns, the ridiculous shit that happened, the freedom they have to solve something in a way the Dungeon Master never expected, that sounds awesome. Then I actually try something like that and realize, oh, I don't want to do any of this. And I think Baldur's Gate 3 is probably the great example I've ever seen of that style of RPG. The amount of freedom this game gives you is ridiculous. Characters remember what you've done, quests can completely change because of your decisions, the developers somehow account for shit I wouldn't even think of trying, and it's genuinely incredible. And then combat starts, and it's turn-based. I've never been a huge turn-based guy. I like Pokemon. That's about as far as I'm getting. And when you combine turn-based combat with all these spells, abilities, party members, positioning, stats, dice rolls, my tiny RPG brain starts overheating. And again, that's not the game's fault. If anything, everything that makes Baldur's Gate 3 so beloved is exactly what makes it difficult for me to get into. It's deep, it's complex. It gives you an almost stupid amount of freedom. And if you're into that, I completely understand why this is one of your favorite games ever made. I just don't think it's ever going to be one of mine. And Baldur's Gate is probably the easiest game on this list for me to explain. I understand exactly why I don't like it. Breath of the Wild is a little different, because there are things about that game I genuinely can't stand. Zelda is different, because unlike Baldur's Gate, there are things about this game I genuinely don't like. And let's get the big one out of the way, weapon degradation. I fucking hate it. I understand what Nintendo is trying to do. If your weapons constantly break, you're encouraged to experiment. You're constantly picking up new stuff. You're not supposed to find one really good sword 5 hours into the game and use it for the next 50. I get it. I still hate it. It feels like I pick up a sword, hit 3 enemies with it, and the game goes, well, that's enough of it. And the Master Sword does this too. The Master Sword. The legendary sword that seals the darkness apparently needs to take a smoke break every other encounter. I know there's a gameplay reason for it. I don't care. That's bullshit. But weapon degradation is really just part of my bigger problem with these games. They're almost too free. Which sounds ridiculous because that's the entire reason Breath of the Wild was so revolutionary. You finish a great plateau and Nintendo basically points you towards Hyrule and says, go. And that's awesome. But after a while, I start wanting someone to point me in a direction. Give me something. Because there's a difference between feeling free and feeling like I'm wandering around hoping I stumble into something interesting. And for as huge as these maps are, sometimes they just feel kinda empty to me. Now Tears of the Kingdom tries to solve some of this by giving you even more freedom. You can build and combine shit. You can make planes, trains, and automobiles. Some psychopaths built torture chambers.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
The fact that this thing runs on a Switch at all qualifies as black magic. But there's one problem. I don't really like building things. I didn't care about settlement building in Fallout 4, and I don't particularly care about spending 15 minutes building a contraption in Zelda when I could just go do the thing. So once again, one of the game's biggest strengths is something that doesn't do much for me. And Tears of the Kingdom has another problem for me. It doesn't really feel like a full sequel. It feels like the world's largest DLC. Obviously this is a hyperbole, there's an enormous amount of new content here, but I'm still exploring Hyrule again. I'm still doing a lot of the same things. And because I already wasn't completely in love with Breath of the Wild, Return to that same world just didn't have the appeal for me that it probably did for someone who loved the first game. Tears of the Kingdom giving me more Breath of the Wild wasn't exactly going to fix that. But here's a weird thing. I completely understand why people love these games. If you're someone who loves experimentation, who sees an obstacle and immediately starts thinking about 5 different ways you can solve it, who can spend an hour building something completely unnecessary just because you can, Tears of the Kingdom is probably one of the greatest games ever made for you. For me, I just want my fucking sword to stop breaking. And then there's Ghost of Tsushima. This is one that frustrates me the most. Because unlike Baldur's Gate, I can't just say it's not my type of game. And unlike Zelda, there aren't really any major mechanics that I can't stand. On paper, I should absolutely love Ghost of Tsushima. The combat is great. The world is absolutely gorgeous. The presentation is phenomenal. And from what I played, I was genuinely interested in Jin's story. This game has basically everything it needs to be something I love. And then, I open the map, and suddenly I'm playing a Ubisoft game. There's something over here, something over there, a side quest, another activity, something to collect, an outpost to clear. More, and I just don't care. That's probably my biggest problem with a lot of modern open world games. I don't want opening the map to feel like I'm looking at a grocery list. And Ghost of Tsushima is obviously a much more thoughtfully made game than some random copy and paste open world. Even the way it guides you through the environment is brilliant. The when replacing a giant waypoint on your screen is such a cool idea. And there's still part of my brain that sees all those optional objectives and thinks, well, I have to do those. And then suddenly I'm spending hours doing things I don't really care about instead of progressing through the story that I do care about. And eventually, I just stop playing. Which sucks, because out of these 3 games, Ghost of Tsushima is probably the one I'm most likely to go back to. I want to finish it. I want to see where the story goes. I just need to get over this stupid compulsion to do everything the map puts in front of me. There's also one other reason I've struggled to get into this title. And this one is completely irrational. Sometimes when I'm consuming media that's really heavily influenced by Japanese culture, I start feeling like a weeb. Not because there's anything wrong with Japanese media, I become hyper aware that I'm inching closer to growing a neck beard, buying a katana, changing my profile picture to anime girl, and making Japan my entire personality. I don't know why my brain does this. This is entirely a me problem, but it doesn't even make sense. Because I fucking love Sekiro. Maybe if Jin could resurrect himself and fight a giant ape with a sword, my brain would get over it. But Ghost of Tsushima is the game on this list that frustrates me the most. I want to love this game. Unlike Baldur's Gate or Zelda, I honestly think there's a chance I eventually will. Maybe I just need to stop treating every icon on the map like an assignment. But right now, I respect Ghost of Tsushima a hell of a lot more than I enjoy playing it. I think that's what makes these games interesting to me, because these aren't 3 games that I think are bad. They're 3 games I respect for completely different reasons. Baldur's Gate 3 made me realize that sometimes a game can execute exactly what it's trying to do, and I'm simply not the audience for it. Zelda made me realize that I can understand why a developer made certain choices, and still absolutely hate them. And Ghost of Tsushima might be the strangest one, because sometimes a game can have almost everything you're looking for, and still just not click. Maybe that's really all there is to it. Not every game needs to be either a masterpiece or overrated. Sometimes you can look at a game everyone calls a masterpiece and go, yeah, I completely understand. I still don't want to play it. So now I want to know yours. What's a game you respect way more than you actually enjoy? Not a game you think is overrated, not something you think secretly sucks. A game where you completely understand why people love it. You just don't feel the same way. Let me know in the comments because I'm genuinely curious what games fall into that category for other people. And if you enjoy this kind of discussion, consider subscribing. I've got plenty more games I want to talk about. Until next time.